next we are going to speak with the amazing Latoya Williams. And before we start, I am going to tell the story about how I met this woman, which is pretty interesting. So a few years ago, excuse me, I attended a women's conference in Charlotte, and I actually interviewed someone who integrated schools in. She was the first person to integrate schools in Charlotte, in North Carolina. So to speak to what Alicia was talking about earlier on, right? Just having those benefits. And during, I think we were registering, I was registering participants, and I looked over and saw Latoya and her setup, and I just heard the Lord say, go and support that woman. So I went over and I introduced myself and I said, I'd like to support you. And, I wanted to make sure that she takes cards because I didn't have cash on me. And I said, okay, well, great. I'll be back tomorrow, be back downstairs tomorrow to purchase something. Coming to find out, we lived, and now we're in a different state, right? We lived not even 15 minutes away from each other. So yes, yes, yes. So that's how God works in amazing, mysterious ways. And our daughters are close in age. And so once we started talking and got to know each other, she invited Abby to her daughter's Sweet 16 that same summer. And, she would take Abby out with her daughter. They did dance together, right? Because I was still trying to navigate the new space that I was in. I didn't really know anyone, but God gave me yet another sister right up the street in a place where I didn't have any family or friends at the time. So I'm just so excited that you're here. I'm so happy to know you. And yeah, welcome.
Likewise, I always say our relationship is like a divine. It was orchestrated. You can't mix this stuff up. So
Indeed, indeed. So let's see. Journey and purpose. How did you navigate the transition from motherhood to becoming an insurance agency owner, author, and investor while staying true to your purpose?
okay. So first, before I get to that, I just want to say something to Alicia. If is this okay?
Of course, absolutely. We're having a
Okay.
conversation.
Alicia, I was almost in tears when she was speaking, and I feel like this is the reason why I would want to be rich and wealthy because I promise you, I would give so much money to you. I would want you to start your own school. Number one, I felt so grateful just to be here in a place where with other women that we have the freedom, regardless of how we feel about this country right now, you have the freedom to educate your own children and other people's children. And you can champion to have schools to come on board with you. And I think that that's amazing. And I just feel grateful that you had the opportunity to do that. I feel grateful for you because as mothers, we're all nurturers and we have the heart of Mother Nature, which always wants to see progress. And because of the culture we live in, we don't always get the privilege to educate our own children, which I think is priceless. So I salute you and I think you're amazing.
I'm so glad. And you can unmute and respond, Alicia.
Oh, yeah, I was saying thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And just like I was inspired by many others, I hope someone here may be inspired to take a leap of faith and do the same.
Yes, absolutely.
And Latoya, I'm glad you brought that up because at the end, I'm going to talk about the next steps
Mhm.
for the woman, the wisdom, the wonder, which includes just like the networking and the collaborations and partnerships that can come out of this. So, yes.
Absolutely. Okay, so sorry to derail, but ask your questions this one more time because I forgot it. Quick. What is it again?
I'm just curious about your transition. You're a mother, right? And you became an insurance agency owner I know you wrote a book, you're an investor, and you do so many different things. So I wanted to know, how do you do all of that and also stay true to your purpose?
Mhm. I would say the way I do it is because I'm naturally, my godmother who passed, she was like my mother, but she would always say that she would just call me a rebel all the time. Like my nature is very assertive, and I am a little defiant. I just have a defiant nature. And it has worked for me because when I was 21 and I started working at Capital One, well, I was leaving Capital One, but I realized that I wasn't an employee because I don't like to listen to people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know I'm not going to listen. I'm going to come in there and try to run the people's business. I'm going to tell them what, listen, they don't take too kind to that. They like, ma'am, you are not in charge here, right? So I had to realize that I needed to do something differently. And also I know that independence and freedom, those are my two core values. And I just couldn't do that in the confines of a work environment. So when I was 21, I quit Capital One, and everybody in my family thought I was crazy. I was making a lot of money. I had just bought a house and everything. And I didn't know if I was going to ever get a paycheck again because I went into sales and I had no sales experience. But I knew that I could not stay in an office like that. And so I went out and got my insurance license, and I started working for this gentleman who's on Midlothian. He had an insurance agency, and I would drive anywhere within 2.5 hours where people were buying insurance. And I did that while I was 8 months pregnant, slipping and sliding in the ice, so that when I had my baby, I could be home with him. And again, that freedom to not have to go out if my baby is sick. I'm not even gonna call you and tell you I'm not coming in. Like if you see what I'm saying? I know me, so I had to create the environment that fit for the person who I am. And every step of the way, again, I believe that my steps are ordered. It was just a natural progression because I really need to be challenged. Every day I feel like I need some type of excitement. And that's how I started investing and trading. When the insurance, because I had been doing it for 24 years and the income was passive, it wasn't so much of a challenge for me. Because it's like I'm dealing with my aunties and uncles every day. The people I deal with are so sweet and loving. I mean, I don't even feel like I'm selling anything, but I need that challenge. So that's how that happened. And then the writing the book that came out of me starting a community on Facebook called the Journey to Self-Love Challenge. And I coined it the Journey of 10,000 Women. There was absolutely no women in the community at the time. And within 90 days, there were over 10,000 women in that group. And I wrote the book because in that community at the time, this was in 2015, those women came in, they didn't know me from, a person on the moon, and they were so transparent and vulnerable. I wanted to tell them my story so that they could feel like I'm more comfortable. This is a reciprocity. I'm sharing with you, you're sharing with me. And that's where that came from. So my journey has evolved from me knowing who I am, knowing what my core values are, taking the course of sometimes most resistance to ultimately get to the place of least resistance, which is right now, that every single day that I wake up, I get to decide what I want to do. And I just love that because it really makes me feel like myself, right? Free. And so that's how that happened.
Wow. And I mean, I'm sure you will argue with me, but I do not see you as a rebel. Perhaps you've changed. You are a leader. You are a leader. And you don't really hear many people admitting that that line of work isn't cut out for them because they would want to change things. If you see something that isn't going right, then of course, naturally you would want to fix it. And unfortunately, we, a lot of us are in jobs where we feel that way, but we don't do anything about it. We don't say anything about it for fear of being fired or whatever. And we just end up spending 25, 30, 35 years. And I'm not downplaying anyone's decision to do that. But like you said, it also ties into your personality. And if I can tell you really quickly, from my undergrad, I was studying journalism. And after taking a class called television news class, which is an 8 hour long class. I remember it was on a Thursday. So every Thursday we have this 8 hour class. And one day when they went on the wires to see what had come in and what was going to make it on the news and how we were going to structure the rundown, I did not like their choice because I felt that it was racist. It was, they had put a story of a white lady whose dog, I think went missing or something like that. She was an older lady above a Black family in Brooklyn who had experienced a fire or something around that nature. And so when I inquired and they said, no, well, that's how we're going to set it, and there was nothing that anyone else could do or say, I knew that if I pursued this career, I would have to look for a job every single Monday morning because it wasn't something that I was willing to put up with, right? Not that I want to be a fighter or anything, but there are just some things that, in life where some of us aren't meant to tolerate, right? And yes, sometimes God has us in places for a reason to bring about change, but I didn't feel at that time. And again, I was young. I was probably still a teenager, right? And I didn't have that awareness. But once we're in a job, sometimes we are meant to stay there to bring about the change and to be a light. And then sometimes we are meant to step out and fade and create our own things. And now you have so many aunts and uncles that, you probably never would have had, right? So moving on, and you answered my other question in that last question too, so I'll skip over that. But what obstacles did you face while building a business and brand, and how did you push through the moments of doubt and fear?
I would say that when it came to my insurance business, there wasn't a lot of doubt and fear because those are my roots. I've been selling insurance since I was 21. It just comes second nature. Sales, I love the psychology of sales. And so because I'm very versed in the products and the nature of the business, it was never really a challenge there. But for my Restore Her business and for my community that I had, one of the biggest challenges was the fact that I am not, no, what that I am very what's it called? I'm a loner, right? I'm a loner, but I had all of these women and I'm an extrovert. I love people. I just don't really like to be around people a lot for a long time. And I know that about myself. But I had these women who felt connected to me and I wanted to take them on retreats and all these things. And I was like, I can't take these women on retreats because I know I'm gonna go somewhere retreat off by myself and I'm the person in charge and they're looking for me and I'm off somewhere laying beside a space heater reading a book because I recharge when I'm by myself and I love to be by myself. And I literally have a small window of like social energy. And so I had to be very cognizant of that. And that's why I believe it didn't go further because I wasn't in a place that I was willing to sacrifice and come outside of my comfort zone in that area where those women really would have needed me. Does that make sense? Because I still was dealing with my own issues. Like I was going through a divorce at the time. I was trying to find my voice. All of this happened so suddenly where I kind of was thrust into this environment of a leader to these women, and I was struggling myself. So to me, it wasn't more so the mechanics of the business and the intricacies around setting up the business, because I actually had a business helping people do that, right? It was more so me showing up authentically because I'm speaking about self-love. And I believe that I trusted my community. If I was not showing up authentically, I believe they would have seen that. They would have noticed that, right? Because as women, we're very discerning and it would have caused a disconnect anyway. So that was the issue with that part of my business. And then the issue with the Restore Her, which is a brand that inspires women to nurture their natural beauty. I started it in 2020 because I saw that Black women, I think that we're so just naturally beautiful, but the enhancements that we were wearing was covering up our natural beauty. We weren't enhancing our beauty. We were literally hiding behind it. And I was just thinking, like, why can't we wear the enhancements, but also nurture our natural beauty? So if you wear lashes, that's perfectly fine. Just take care of your lashes too, right? Don't neglect your lashes. Or if you wearing wigs or weave, okay, perfectly fine. But take care of your hair underneath that. Um, the challenge there was, again, that I like to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And you can't run a business like that. You have to show up. I mean, you got to go to events. You got to do this, that, and the third. And I sometimes, this is so transparent, y'all. Sometimes I just don't feel like doing anything. And so and I don't have to do anything, right? I didn't have to do that business. And to me, it was different than when I was selling insurance and I was so motivated because it's a different zeal when you have to do it, right? If I get in lioness mode, nothing's going to stop me. But right now, business wise and for income, I'm not in that place, thank God. So it's like a fire in me that is not so driven to do this stuff, right? But when it came to trading, I like that because I don't have to be around people all the time. I get the thrills and the excitement every single day is something new. It challenges me, and there's not much in my life that challenges me. So I need that, you know? Yeah. So
Thank you for sharing and being your
that
authentic
was the
self,
long answer.
as you usually are. But you talked about the previous business and not perhaps not showing up as your authentic self and people seeing that.
Mhm.
However, what I can say about you since I've known you is that although it didn't work during that time, because like you said, you were experiencing a divorce, there were so many different things going on. You naturally do it nonetheless, because look at how we met,
Mhm.
right? And I know the amazing person you are. I know the amazing mom that you are, the amazing woman that you are, because you would often see my struggles when I had papers due, right?
Mhm.
You would say, "Hey, Aisha, come over, take 2 hours for yourself. Come over. I'm setting up for you." You
Mhm.
would put out fruit,
Yes.
vegetables. I don't want to start crying, but you would put out fruit, vegetables, ask me for whatever it is that I want. And what is it, the sauna thing that
On the
you
blanket. Hmm.
right, and you have that and so many different things. And you've done that multiple times. You've reached out and said, "How can I help you today? Let me take Abby out
Hmm.
while the boys are at camp." You came up with a schedule so that your daughter so that my daughter can join your daughter and dance during the summer, because you know my daughter loves to dance.
Yeah.
So I think that you do not give yourself much credit. And and I know that you've shared that you consistently work on certain things, but I also hope that you can recognize um the strides that you're making, and continue to let go of those things of the past as you make those strides,
Hmm.
because you're doing it.
Thank you.
You're doing multiple things right now.
Hmm. Yes, I
They
am.
may not be in the way that you want them to based on your personality,
Hmm.
but it still shines through. And I'm grateful.
Hmm. Thank you, sis. I think that I receive what you're saying, and I do acknowledge what my gifts are naturally. I do. I know that I have a gift of connecting with people because that is, again, one of my core values, just real connection, which is why I love the people in my circle. I just love them so vigorously because I get to choose them, right? Or God chooses them in my life, and I don't take that for granted. And I also believe, just to speak to what I said about the women's organization that I had and stuff like that, I believe that timing is everything. So you could be doing the right thing at the wrong time. Right. Even a conversation you can have. I remember when I was married, I knew that I could only really have a real in-depth conversation with my husband while he was overnight driving trucks because I would get the best response. Right. So it's the right thing having the conversation to have the conversation. But if I'm trying to have it when he just walked in the door from work, yeah, that's not going to go too well. Right. So I think it's the same thing with a lot of other things because our steps are being ordered. I know mine are. It could be that God is positioning me and posturing my heart to really be open to receive women and to pour into women at a level that I never could have imagined before. I'm open and available to that. But I know that that experience at the time, it helped me see a lot of things about my nature and to just be honest about that. But I know that if God wants and commands me to do something, my nature is not even an issue. It's not even relevant because He will model me for that role and groom me for that.
Amen. Amen. And groom you after you've said yes and are going through, because just think about what's going on right now, right?
Mhm.
I did not sit and premeditate about this. This was placed in my lap. And I mean, I'm not a huge fan of public speaking. I will do it if I'm asked, but look at what's happening. And as I said yes, and I started reaching out to people, 20 something women said yes in less than 1 week. I would have, if I had thought about this, I'd probably say, oh, you know what? I don't
Yeah.
think this is going to happen. And look at what is taking place right now.
Mhm. You would talk
But
yourself out of it for sure. But that's what we do.
exactly.
Good
So
things are not in control. That's what I say.
exactly. So I'm glad you said that. And I'm
Mhm.
just glad that you allow God to work in your life in the way that He wants to.
Mhm.
And I'm just so thrilled. You answered so many of my questions. So I think we can close out now and just talk about the advice that you would give to women who feel called to step out of traditional career paths to create something that aligns more with their unique gifts and purposes.
Hmm. Two things. I'm gonna answer that first, and I want to say one thing because I may have to jump off. But the first thing I would say is with what Alicia's doing, I believe that the young people that she has influence over are going to have an advantage because learning in such a small and intimate setting, I believe there's a lot of value there. And so I wish that one thing that we could learn sooner is who we really are versus who we are culturally designed to be and where we're supposed to fit in. A lot of people don't agree with that because in some cultures, if they need doctors, okay, you're gonna be a doctor. You're gonna be that, right? You got to just do what the community commands, and I understand that. But I still think that there's something inside of us at a young age that we don't really figure out until we get older. And then now we're shifting careers when we're supposed to be retiring, right? So I just think that if we could really just, I believe that the truth happens, and God is able to speak the truth when we're still. Prayer is necessary, but sometimes we have to be quiet because if you're constantly talking, you can't hear the answer. And sometimes we really have to ask, Lord, show me the core of who I am and what is it that resonates most with that. And I think that once you do that, whatever is dropped in your spirit from there, that's is gonna be cultivated because that's the truth. But a lot of times we're too busy in school, we're too busy, taking a class or trying to do this. It's just so much happening. We have so many distractions and chaos. How can people hear God speaking to them and tell them the real truth and guide them if they never just like stop? So I know that's not practical advice, like, well, see if this fits. Go inside and be still, and you will get your answer to what is your next step, if anything.
No,
Okay.
it is. It's practical advice for our spiritual walk with
Yes.
God, right?
Yes, it is.
That's what we're supposed to practice. And we're supposed to train children to do that
Mhm.
from young.
Mhm.
But we didn't learn, we didn't learn that from young, right? And a lot of us are trying to figure it out for ourselves even right now. So it's hard to then do that with our kids.
Mhm.
And perhaps it's meant for us to do it. It's meant for us to do together as a family.
Mhm.
Really
Yes.
and truly, it's supposed to be a family, a journey as a family,
Mhm.
right? Where of course, we will model it in a certain way for the younger ones, right?
Mhm.
And for the different ages that they are. And of course, as adults, we know that there's a different way for us
Mhm.
because we are more mature, we're more experienced, and the way we'll relate with the older children will be different to the way
Yeah.
that we'll relate with the younger ones,
Mhm.
But I'm grateful that you said that because um, God knew us before we were formed in
Mhm.
our mother's wombs,
Yeah.
right? And He knows the end from the beginning. And if we were to seek Him the way that we should, even children will know from young who they are
Mhm.
and what they were born to do.
Powerful.
But we have made that, we have dismissed that, we have walked away from that as a society, as a culture, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
right? So unfortunately, it's about, for some, relearning, right? Or just learning, period, and just doing it and
Yeah.
allowing God to be God.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, I have one more thing I wanted to say, sis.
Oh,
One
you
more.
did? Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. The one other thing I want to say is to everyone here, I'm gonna try not to cry, but I personally don't know where we would be without women. We are so necessary and so amazing. Like we are the thermostats, right? We're the thermostat. We're not the thermometer. We set the tone. We are the mothers of nature. And we have healing. We literally hold healing in our bosoms. And so I just want to go back to something Alicia was saying, like about community. I believe that in a time such as this, where there's so much unrest amongst people in their homes, on their jobs, on the roads, I mean, it is in the atmosphere, something is happening. It's unsettling. And what you said, Alicia, about community, it was in a different context, but I just want to inspire everyone to know that in order for us to get through this, whatever we feel is happening, it's going to require us to become community again. It is. And guess what? Who's going to have to lead that movement? The women. It's just what it is, right? Listen, like we're tired, okay? We're seriously tired. But guess what? Our children's lives are depending on it, and our grandchildren's lives are depending on it. So again, we're just gonna have to go in, build community of other women. Like you said, the next steps for this, that's gonna be very important. Just to connect to other women who can inspire us to be strong, to sit in the gap and to intercede for our families, our husbands, our employers, like all of this stuff on a spiritual level. So that's my declaration. Like women are amazing. Ladies, stay strong. I know you're tired. I know you're tired. But this world is not going to change without us. It's not going to be shifted without us. And I love you, sis. Thank you for having me, and thank you for thinking enough of me to have me on your on the platform as a speaker. I really appreciate it, and I would never take you and what you do and your heart for granted.
Wow. Well, thank you
You're welcome.
for everything that you shared. And like Sister Yolanda put in the chat, a call to action. And I do
Mhm.
believe that we are called as women for such a time as this. However,
Mhm.
as I've said from the first session, we cannot do it alone as women. We need the men. We need the men. And prayerfully, we will find a way to partner with the men as we do what God is calling us to do as women in this time and space, and to support the men in what they're created to do, and vice versa. That's what I believe, that how it's supposed to be, right? So I'm so grateful. Thank you for sharing. And I know you said you have to leave early, so have a blessed evening and we will talk soon.